Sometimes it is easy to predict what will happen in the stories of series and movies, but what happened at the end of Alice in Borderland left us all surprised and wanting to continue watching this great story. What would you say if I showed you that the one we all thought was evil and cruel is actually the opposite? What would you think if I told you that we were all wrong about one of the characters? We were shocked to see at the end of the first season of Alice in Borderland, when the survivors arrived at the subway, and realized that they were all dead. There they also realized that one of the people who was next to them in the beach house was not really who she said she was but had deceived everyone in that place. We are talking about Mira, one of the most hated people in history, and responsible for many of the most cruel and ruthless games of the series. In that first season finale, we saw who she really was, and her dark and evil personality. But in reality, what is the real story of Mira, and why was she not evil as we all thought? Today I want to tell you about the sad story of Mira. Remember that if you are a fan of this kind of series, subscribe to our channel, that every day we create content for you. To begin all this explanation, we have to understand several concepts and several very important things about this character. We know that in the first season, we saw Mira as part of the people who were executive members of the beach house, and although her character was important, we never realized what was to come later in the second season. It wasn't until Arissa made it all the way to the subway, where he realized several things, including that the people who had been watching all the games in that place had been eliminated by the laser from the sky. Then we saw how surprised they all were when they realized that Mira came out on the TV screens congratulating them for having finished that stage of the games, but warned them that now another round of games begins, this time harder and more painful for everyone. It was there when millions of fans understood that Mira was the villain or the person of more authority in the games, and that would make her the most hated of all Alice in Borderland fans. Later, when the second season that we were all waiting for came out, we realized that it was not like that. That Mira was not the person behind the games, and that she was simply a person who won the games at some point and decided to stay in Borderland. That's how she became what we all saw. The person responsible for creating and crafting Borderland's most feared games, the card games of hearts. These games are the most feared because they involve the deepest feelings of human beings and will mentally kill the players. But who was Mira in real life, and what was her sad story? In the games she is not seen much, and it is not known what she does most of the time, so we can understand that in that available time she was working on creating the games she is responsible for. Mira is also present when the game 10 of Hearts on the beach begins. At the beginning of the game, she comments to Yuji Mahiru that Naragi was very skillful in provoking everyone's bloodlust, so that they would start eliminating each other. Mira's whereabouts are not described for most of the game, but she is seen approaching Chishiya on the rooftop after his fight with Naragi. So we can see how Mira what she does is simply observing and studying people's behavior. When we see Arisu in the final game, we learned many things about this person, and this is where we are going to stop to detail everything. The only requirement of this game was not to withdraw from the game until the game is over. This was a little different than what we all would have expected, as we all knew this was the last game and would be the hardest. So all Arisu had to do was play, and it didn't matter if he won or lost. The reality is that this was a very difficult test, and we were all shocked afterwards by what happened. At that moment Mira began to play with Arisu's mind and little by little changed his perception of everything in the place. Recall that Arisu, from the moment he arrived on the roof of the building to play, he wants to know the truth of what Borderland really is and why they are in that place. Mira does not answer his questions, although Arisa asked several times until finally she told him that she would tell him the truth. We saw how Mira told him several stories, which even confused many fans, but in reality none of these stories were true. Although we can't deny that the idea that humans found a way to live forever, and because of that they created the game in order to have more experiences, is an amazing idea. But the reality is that this part of the story was invented by her. Then the whole image changes and we see Arisu in an office next to her, and she tells him that she is his psychiatrist and shows him what had actually happened that morning when his friends and he were in the middle of the street. By that time, many of us fans, we knew what was going on. Actually, the game was that he should endure to finish the game no matter if he wins or loses. But we knew that Mira Kano would do everything possible because Arisu would get out of the game. Then we saw how Usagi realized everything and tried to make Arisu keep his promise to never leave her and be with her until the end. This happened in the last scene of this great series that moved Mira to the point that she began to cry when she saw that the love of Arisu and Usagi had been able to do something incredible, and that was to overcome that last test. We saw her calm afterwards, and many would even think that she was happy because she actually lost the game. But why did that actually happen? Why did everything change at the end, and apparently she showed her true feelings? She told Arisu that what she had done was wonderful and that she was moved. Finally, when Arisu won, she congratulated him and told him that life was just a game and he had to enjoy it. But seeing the love that Arisu felt and how she was able to overcome her final test thanks to that love, she apparently understood that it was worth sacrificing her own life in Borderland and losing the game in order to give Arisu a chance to come back and enjoy life. It is important to know why Mira decided to stay in Borderland. It is said that psychiatrists, if they are not careful, can get involved in their patients' stories, and it seems that this happened to her. Mira became aware of the many injustices of this world through her patients and how human beings end up in depression and often have no way out. Mira ended up being part of the depression of her patients, and that affected her very much. When she arrived at Borderland, she realized that the only thing she has to do is try to live, and that in that world she has no emotional involvement with anyone, and that's why she stays. So we can say that in reality Mira Kano was not evil, but simply a depressive person who became obsessed with human behavior, who beat the games and decided to stay in Borderland because in real life she suffered a lot and this new life just had to prepare games. But what do you think about this character in the series? Do you think she was actually bad but changed when she saw Arisu's love for Usagi? Or do you think she was good and simply wanted to study the behavior of the players? If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and share this video with your friends.